Rhaenyra didn't lose King's Landing to Aegon. She's losing it to her own guards. Everyone's talking about Tumbleton. Everyone's talking about Sunfire. Almost nobody is talking about the 2,000 men in gold cloaks who put her on that throne and who are now the reason she might lose it. Here's the thing people miss about the City Watch. It wasn't always loyal. It wasn't always disciplined. It wasn't always gold. One man built it, piece by piece, favor by favor, execution by execution, into a private army wearing a royal uniform. And once you understand how he built it, Rhaenyra's current crisis stops being a plot twist. It becomes inevitable. In the next 9 minutes, how Daemon turned a gang of corrupt thugs into the most loyal force in Westeros. The blood ritual that bought that loyalty, a rot he never cleaned out, and why that same weapon is now turning on the woman sitting the throne. Before Daemon, the City Watch wasn't a force. It was a joke with weapons. Under Maegor the Cruel, the Watch was a leftover of his tyranny, untrained men in whatever scraps of armor they could scrounge, more feared for shaking down merchants than for stopping crime. When Maegor died, the very first thing the next king did was arrest the man running it. That tells you everything. The Watch wasn't protecting the city. It was protecting whoever sat the throne and nothing else. For almost 100 years, that's all it ever was. Background noise. Corrupt, disorganized, disposable. Then Otto Hightower made a mistake that would define the next 20 years of Westerosi history. He wanted Daemon out of the small council. Too dangerous, too unpredictable, too close to the crown. So Otto convinced King Viserys to hand his volatile younger brother a job nobody with real ambition would want, commander of the City Watch. A demotion dressed up as a promotion. Otto thought he was sidelining Daemon. What he actually did was hand him 2,000 armed men and tell him to do whatever he wanted with them. Daemon didn't reform the Watch. He rebuilt it from the ground up. Out went the rags and the rusted spears. In came matching black ringmail for the rank and file, steel breastplates for officers, and, funded straight out of the royal treasury, heavy wool cloaks dyed in a color no one in Flea Bottom could mistake. Gold. But the uniform was the easy part. The real shift was who got to wear it. Daemon threw out the old rule that command belonged to whoever had the right last name. He promoted based on who could actually fight, who could actually lead, low-born men included. For the first time, a street kid from Flea Bottom could rise to command rank in the king's own city guard. That single decision is why this worked. Daemon didn't just arm 2,000 men. He gave 2,000 men who'd spent their whole lives being ignored by the nobility a reason to owe him personally. Uniforms and promotions build a workforce. They don't build a cult. For that, Daemon needed something darker. He didn't rule the Watch from the Red Keep. He walked Flea Bottom with them. The brothels, the gambling dens, the taverns. He drank with the men he commanded. The small folk started calling him Lord Flea Bottom. To his men, he wasn't a prince slumming it for good PR. He was one of them, with a crown attached. Then came the moment that sealed it. Right before the heirs tournament, with half the great houses of Westeros about to arrive in the capital, Daemon marched his new gold cloaks into the city's worst corners and delivered instant, brutal justice. Accused criminals rounded up and punished on the spot. No trial, no mercy. He didn't stand back and watch. He picked up Dark Sister himself and executed a man in front of his men. Think about what that moment actually did. For the nobles arriving in the city, it looked like law and order. For the criminals of Flea Bottom, it was a warning. But for the gold cloaks themselves, it was a baptism. Their commander had just proven, in blood, that under his command, they answered to no law but his. That's not leadership. That's initiation. Here's the problem with building loyalty on shared violence. You don't get to pick which parts of that violence stay controlled. Remember Blood? The assassin who murdered young Prince Jaehaerys in his bed? He wasn't some outside hire. He was a former Gold Cloak sergeant, trained under Daemon himself, later serving under Harwin Strong, until Strong finally threw him out for beating a woman to death in a drunken rage. That's the part people skip over. Daemon's meritocracy didn't just reward the disciplined and the capable. It rewarded whoever could handle brutality. And some of those men never learned where the line was. When Daemon wanted vengeance for his grandson's death, he didn't need to look far. He went straight back to his old network in Fleabottom, and a disgraced ex-Gold Cloak was standing right there, still loyal, still willing to kill on his word. The same pipeline that made the Gold Cloaks unstoppable also made them a standing threat to the family that built them. Which brings us to the moment that decided the entire war. When Rhaenyra and Daemon flew over King's Landing to finally take it, the fight wasn't won by dragons. It was won the second the Gold Cloaks remembered who trained them. In the show, when Rhaenyra and Daemon walked into that throne room with no guard and got cornered, it wasn't Dragonfire that saved them. It was Sir Luther Largent and a unit of Gold Cloaks stepping in and turning on the green soldiers around them. 20 years. 20 years since Daemon commanded them directly, and the second he needed them, they remembered exactly whose cloaks these really were. That's not an army being loyal to the crown. That's an army being loyal to a man. And Rhaenyra just inherited a debt she didn't create. Now here's why this actually matters today, after Tumbleton. Rhaenyra tried using the Gold Cloaks the way she wanted to rule, sending them to raid noble estates, seize hoarded grain, hand it out to Fleabottom. Good optics, terrible economics. It emptied her treasury and turned the nobility against her at the exact moment Tywin Lannister was quietly bleeding her coffers dry from the inside. Then came the graffiti, Queen of Bastards, scrawled across the city, a direct hit on her dead children's legitimacy. And how did she find out? Not from her spymaster, from Ulf the White, blurting it out in open court like an idiot looking for a favor. Humiliated, Rhaenyra did the one thing her uncle taught this institution to do. She sent the Gold Cloaks in to scrub the walls and beat a confession out of Fleabottom. Look at what that actually is. The same tactics, the same cloaks, the same streets. The only thing that changed is who gave the order. And the people getting dragged out of their homes don't care that it's a queen doing it instead of a prince. To them, it's the exact same weapon, pointed at them for the exact same reason. Silence. That's the dark secret behind the Gold Cloaks. Daemon didn't build a shield for House Targaryen. He built a machine that runs on fear and personal loyalty, and it doesn't care who's holding the leash. Viserys, Daemon, Rhaenyra. The cloak stays gold no matter who's wearing it, and so does what it's willing to do to keep that person in power. Rhaenyra just proved she learned that lesson perfectly. The question is whether she also learned what happens when a force built on fear finally runs out of people left to be afraid. So here's my question for you. When the small folk finally push back for real, and after this episode, that's coming, do you think the Gold Cloaks stay loyal to Rhaenyra? Or do they do exactly what they did to the Greens, and flip the second it's not worth it anymore? Tell me below. I'm reading every comment on this one. And if you want the full timeline of how this war actually reaches that breaking point, that video's right here. Watch that next.